Hi there, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting of the Willits City Council of March 8th, 2023 to order. Mayor is feeling a little under the weather, so I, being the vice mayor, will take over today. And so I'd like to open up with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll go ahead and read it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councilmember Strong? Here. Rodriguez? Present. Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Present. All right. So now we'll go to item 2, which is public communication. The City Council welcomes participation in its meetings. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person so that everyone has an opportunity to address the council. To expedite matters and avoid repetition, whenever any group of persons wishes to address the council on the same subject matter, the mayor may request that the group appoint a spokesperson. The item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the City Council, which are not on the posted agenda. Public criticism of the City Council, commissions, boards, and agencies will not be prohibited, and the City Council will take no action. At this point, is anybody from the public that wants to speak on something that isn't on the agenda? Going, gone. Oh, you do? If you can come up here and state your name, then that's so they...
Where would you like me to be?
Right there, and that's so that the TV public can hear you.
Okay.
The mic doesn't work in the room.
It's not, yeah, it doesn't...
Just stand there?
No, basically, it doesn't amplify your voice in here. It's so that the public can hear you out there in TV land.
Oh, I get it. TV land,
So-
okay. My name is Ruth Ann Volz. I'm the director of the Willits Food Bank. And I was very happy to get a notice maybe 10 days ago that the city would be gifting the food bank with a donation check, a large check, and to be here at this meeting. So here I am. I can talk a little bit about the food bank, or I can be quiet, whichever you like.
Go ahead, it's...
How many minutes do I have left? Like
You know
2?
what? I'll give you a couple more.
Okay. So we service about 1,000 households per month. And that's different from 1,000 people, that's more. So we're serving a lot of people and have a variety of different folks who come to see us, all of them hungry or food insecure. An example is today, we had a lot of people, and among those people were 13 people who needed rooms in motels. We only use the Redwood Inn. They charge us $84.50 a night per person for one room, $89.50 for 2 people in a room. That's the cheapest in Willits, so I'm very pleased that we have that. But just bringing you up to date, there's a high need at this time of year with the cold and the freezing and the snow. So that's been a major part of our service right now. In addition to food. And we continue to keep our doors open and to help people any way we can. But those are the 2 main ways. I can answer questions if you have any. If not, I'll stop.
And I just want to point out that we didn't agendize this. Basically, you got a call from our finance director, and so we really can't go into too far into this. But I'll tell you what, at this point, I'll segue and just provide you the check today. We actually budgeted this, and Manny, is this the first year we budgeted this amount in a while? Because
It's the first year in a while.
But otherwise, we've tried to give them something every year.
Yes.
So
This is something that the council expressed interest in making sure that we re-upped the donations from the city to various organizations. This also includes Our Daily Bread and a couple of other organizations
Senior Center?
as well. Community Center.
Senior Center.
Senior Center. This is the Community Center. And then I believe there's one more.
And this comes out of our community services
County.
budget, right?
Yes, it does.
All right.
Very much
So
appreciated.
Here's a check for $10,000.
Very much appreciated.
Thank you for all your good work.
You're welcome. And we have 2 board members here. 3. Oh, there's one.
Thank you all for coming tonight as well.
Would any of them like to say anything else?
Yeah. If anybody else wants to say something before we, okay. All right, thank you very much, and thank you for coming. And we hope that we can continue to support. We don't have an arm to do the work you do. That's not within our purview, but this is a way that we can participate in this. So there have been years in the past, even when I was police chief and other council members sat up here, that there was always a struggle some years to provide something, but we know that you're a safety net, and the other organizations are too in our community, and so the city, as best they could, tried to provide some funding, if not in a larger amount, a smaller amount, just so that if you had to pair it with a grant or something, you could show that the city was a partner. So sometimes partnering up with other people in other groups or community groups is important for all of us. So thank you again. All right. I will now move to public matters. Item 3, notice public hearing. Conduct annual review of rates and charges for various city services and adopt a resolution approving changes in certain fees and charges effective April 1st, 2023. And Manuel, if you'd like to.
So every year we do an adjustment, or we should be doing an adjustment on our actual fee schedule. And so this is a project that was actually undertaken by our assistant city manager, Kathy, and she did a lot of the legwork in order to be able to get this up and running together. It's basically our ability to be able to charge our rates. It's an update of that. And yeah, I don't know if you have any further questions. It's just an overview of it.
Did you want to?
Well, I do want to add as well that this is an item that's kind of been sitting internally at staff level for at least during my tenure here. It was kind of postponed because of COVID and trying to get, we had other things to worry about instead of, seeing that we were raising rates. But this is a necessary evil. These are the services we provide. We try to neutralize the costs throughout the organization. The budget that has been adopted was programmed with these fees in mind, at least the majority of those increases. And this is basically, like I said, the council has not seen an updated fee schedule for at least 2 years, 2+ years, so they are not keeping up with inflation, unfortunately. So that's kind of the overview, and Manny can go into details. And I do want to add that I had a very good conversation this afternoon with member Strong, Madge Strong there, regarding contents relating to the fee schedule. Specifically, as if anyone has the document in front of them, it's page 31, and that relates to the business license component. The comments I received from Madge helped me understand what was going on, and I subsequently talked to Kathy and Manny because they were able to fill me in and what they would, where we were, what was happening. Basically, the comments from Madge related to, what is the fairness and the equitable question related to businesses? The ratio between size and intensity of business doesn't quite match with fee schedule component. And she's right to a certain extent. There's hard to justify some of those components in there. And like I said, when my discussion with Kathy, who has the longevity here relating to the business license fees, it has been like that for a long time, and it has been something that needed to be addressed. Saying that, Madge's recommendation was potentially either delaying the adoption of the fee schedule in its entirety, or removing this. Staff's recommendation is, knowing the amount of effort that has gone into the document, you can see we're already talking about page 31 and all the components of it, is if the council has any other concerns, let's address them. But the recommendation from staff is to essentially remove the business, or adopt it as a whole with the business license as is. And we will come back to you within 4 months with an amendment proposal for the business license component. And the reason for 4 months, it gives us the time. We are working internally with Avenue Analytics, is that?
Yeah, Avenue Insights and Analytics.
Basically, they're the ones who do our TOT and Bradley Burns tracking, but we're also reaching out to them for a proposal for business license tracking. So we want to bring that into the process, as well. It gives us a chance to start bringing on board Springbrook for our accounting and municipal accounting software program. It also gives us a chance to dive in specifically related to business license fees, what other communities do, what other examples are, so we can bring back a better example for your consideration.
Additionally, I'll go ahead.
Just a question is that you want us to adopt it with that in there as it is now?
Yes.
Because you don't have, so you won't.
We don't have anything else tonight as an alternative. And Kathy, please speak up, because you're the one with the most experience on this. We're not comfortable moving this forward with a hole in the middle. We know it's not perfect. We don't get a lot of business licenses new where this would be triggered. The tenure, the time of 4 months would give us the chance to look at examples, bring something forward, and still allows us to implement the fee schedule as the other components.
I have a question, I guess, two things. One is, some of these are statutory and cost recovery.
Yes.
And then if we pass this today, what happens if ABC, Taylor comes into town and wants to get a business license? Would we revisit this in 4 months? Would we be in a position to either refund credit or do something different in the interim of those 4 months?
At this point, I'm not going to say yay or nay to that type of approach. That could be basically part of our proposal when we return, that in the subsequent time, if a entity came forward and received a business license and their business fees would be drastically different due to the proposed amendments that are being presented to the council, there would be language in that. We would recommend that there is a mechanism to either refund, credit, or adjust.
Are these basically the current?
These are the
fee
current
schedule?
fees.
So it really wouldn't be a gap if we simply didn't adopt this one page.
It's going to remain the same,
It would remain the same anyway.
right?
So what we're basically saying is that over the next 4 months, we will revisit this.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna take some
It doesn't really
time.
change anything to either adopt it or not adopt it.
Right, because it is, this is our fee schedule, and this is what we would be going by.
Yeah.
And I imagine once we redo it, the prices will increase, because we are lower than any other city around.
Yeah, we're also going to be reviewing.
I have several questions. First of all, with Public Works, it says patch pavement and patch sidewalks. It says flat. How big is a flat do you do for $100?
It's just a flat fee.
It's a what?
It's a flat
Flat
fee.
fee.
So it doesn't increase or decrease, it's just that fee. And
So
that-
it could be a whole sidewalk patch,
Yeah.
okay? That answers that. Next one, Police Department. All I have is a batch of numbers, a WMC 10-32-021A. I mean, I have no idea what you're talking about, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
It's,
well,
it's part of the municipal code.
so it could be your red curb, could be your,
It could be anything. I mean, from a point of view of somebody that doesn't know what they're doing here. I'm not doing. You know what you're doing, and you know what the numbers are. But an ordinary person would have no idea, I don't think. I don't think anybody up here can tell me what one of these numbers might be.
No, unfortunately, this is the way it was prior. We can put in what these codes mean, add it to,
Would make it easier.
we can do that.
Okay, next one. This is community development. I know that there's an overlay, and this is for roofs. An overlay is a re-roof without peeling anything off, and then another one, and that's $54. And then the tear-off roof, and it's $81, and that's for somebody that peels it off. Does that mean that they're going to take the tear-off roof away with them? Or they just want, this is just a permit to do this?
If I recall, I believe this is a permit to
Do
do
what?
this. It's a permit to do this.
Thank you.
It'd be a real bargain if you could do it for $81.
That's it for me, thank you.
No problem. Additionally, within the business license subcomponent is that with us getting on with Avenue Insights, they will actually do a review of all of the different businesses within our community itself and utilize information from the state to be able to double check our work. And so we'll be able to utilize state information that businesses submit to the state to be able to do their taxes. We'll be able to double check that the fees that we are receiving are the fees that are associated with the business.
Thank you.
One other, this is kind of an overarching item here. We have not received any objections or remonstrance to this proposal from the general public unless anyone's going to speak before. We haven't received anything in advance.
Well, I have a few more comments about the business license portion of this, which, just so that everybody knows what my concerns are about it. But first I'm going to do what Larry did. There's a couple of specific things. One of them was, in Public Works, a tree maintenance, a permit to do tree maintenance. I'm wondering, why do we have a permit to do tree maintenance? Why can't people just maintain their trees? Or am I misunderstanding what that's for?
Is it for protected trees like heritage oaks?
No. We don't have that
Yeah,
defined.
I'm not 100% on that. I would have
I'm not
to get
here to
back to you on
comment.
that one. There's so many of these in here that, that one slipped by me.
Yeah, it's an amazing array of permit fees and very detailed, and it's obvious that, you have to do that because people come in with all sorts of different varieties of
Kath?
requests. But anyway,
Is that a new entry into it?
No, it's not a new entry. This is from previous. I know in Brook Charles, what that means is if you remove a tree, you have to get a permit. So it could be the same thing.
okay, but maintenance sounds different than removing
But
the
you're
tree.
maintaining, you're getting rid of it. And it could be that it just needs to be a verbiage change. I will check with
Okay, yeah, just a clarification.
Kenan?
Sort of like a clarification on what those police items are. Again, on the police item, there's number 11 on one of the pages that it's for $265, but it doesn't say what it's for. There's a couple of places where there's just a missing title. That was one of them. And the page numbers don't show up on the printed one, so I don't know
No,
which page.
they didn't.
But anyway, there was a number 11 item that was $265. There was moving to the community development, which was on page 17, a negative declaration. I was sort of surprised. I think it was a very small fee, and negative decks seem like sometimes they're very complex. So I was wondering about that.
Dusty, do you have any clarification?
Yeah, so for certain projects, we charge a separate rate depending on the environmental document that we're going to be recommending for adoption there. So we have a different fee set up for a categorical exemption versus a negative declaration, for example. And Councilmember Strong, you're correct in that in charging a minimal fee for that, we're not coming anywhere near the amount of time it takes staff to complete a negative declaration for a project. You may recall staff was before the council some years back, and we actually turned certain permits like annexations and general plan amendments to cost recovery fees, but we purposely left some of the fees for instance, for a conditional use permit that you're seeing in front of you tonight, and left it at a fairly minimal price, recognizing that if we were going to truly recover what the amount of time it takes to complete those types of documents, we'd probably be charging something like $4,000, $5,000, even more. And so I think the thought at the time, at least, was these sort of smaller projects, maybe we keep them artificially low just because typically a lot of times the folks that are presenting those type of small-scale projects are probably going to have a hard time or a harder time fitting the bill for a larger fee that would come closer to recovering the full cost of staff time. And I think tonight's project would be an example of that.
Okay, well, in that particular item, number 10, there's no dollar amount. And then down below that on number 20, there's no heading for what the $600 fee is for. Just, again, just this is sort of like typographic things, like just to fill in the blanks there. And I don't, in general, I think our fee schedule is pretty realistic, and the things that are cost recovery are important because they cost a lot of staff time, and we can't just charge a flat fee for a huge thing. But there's a couple of places where, that we're missing a headline.
We'll check with departments on that one.
Okay. There was, going on the building department, if I can find that in here. Page numbers, but, building department. It says per total value on a bunch of items under building, per total value. I guess I don't know what that means, because it's already graduated by the dollar values of the projects. So you have, more of a fee if it's under 2,000, or if it's over 2,000 or over 50,000, all of that. But then is okay, I guess I understand. It's 20. In that first example, it's $23.50 for the first 500, and then it just keeps going up.
Yeah, I think you have it right, Councilmember Strong. So for instance, if a valuation of a project was $600, we charge them $23.50 for the first 500, and then additional $3.05 for the additional $100. So $600 project would come in at $26.55.
Yeah, I was just...
It's a little bit confusing.
Yeah, okay. And then the water on page 30, which again, I can't find page 30, but there's a same fee for 1.5-inch pipe or a 2-inch pipe. Everything else is sort of graduated by how big the pipes are, and that one stays the same, but 2-inch pipe holds a lot more water than a 1.5. So just thought that should also be, graduated the same, in the same ballpark, as you move forward. That would
1
be,
and 1.5?
1.5 and 2.
yeah, the 1.5-inch pipe and the 2-inch pipes have the same fee, but everything else is graduated by size.
Just a bigger hole.
Yeah, the 2-inch should pay a little bit more than a 1.5-inch, that's all. These are very, very minor, I'm sorry, but, I'm just looking through and just trying to see what makes sense to me. And then number 14 underwater did not specify a size.
I'm taking Madge to my next IRS audit.
I'm going to let her go to each department and do it, because that's what they gave.
I said, get into the weeds. Okay, but so number 14, I think, needs to have a size specified. So
Or it's not supposed to be there.
that's it for the picayune stuff. On the business license fees, what I noticed is not only does it not, I don't see a justification for why certain kinds of businesses pay vastly different fees than other kinds of businesses. And I noticed, for example, in Ukiah, they have a completely different list of different businesses, and they categorize those differently, and I don't see any justification for theirs either. But there's this wide range between, for example, what retail sales businesses pay versus a manufacturer versus a contractor. And, you know, in my world, I would think a retail business has a lot of, we're talking gross sales that they're paying the fee on. They have a lot of expenses. They have, like everybody does, staff expenses, but they have all their product. So their net is very different than their gross. And yet they're paying much higher rates than, say, a landscape designer, or, well, of course, he or she has expenses too, but maybe like an architect, you know, hardly any product cost, but very different fees on these things. So it just, that was one of my puzzlements about it. And then the other puzzlement was that if there is some justification for those ranges of different kinds of businesses paying different rates, the way in which the rates go up as you get a bigger and bigger gross revenue is very inconsistent. Because if you have $10 million of gross sales, a manufacturer pays about half as much, less than half as much as a retail business. But in the middle of the chart, he or she might be paying 1/7 the amount. So to me, if you're going to have a graduated set of fees there, they should sort of consistently move based on whatever your rationale is, why they have to pay more. And this seems to be true for the Ukiah version as well, except they at least base the increase in fees, the ratio stays the same. You know, if you're in the category of retail sales and the bigger your income, then the higher your rate goes. But at least it stays the same throughout that whole category. Anyway, those are things that I hope will get looked at when you come back with the business license fee reevaluated. Because I actually noticed this when I first got on city council, and that was one of the things I thought I would do a little project on, and I let it slide for 10 years.
This has been in the works since I got here, to be honest with you. Every time we bring it to council, it gets talked about, and then unfortunately, it just continues to get dropped. And it's not council's fault. It's just that we've had so many changeover in staff members, and every time it's like, oh, yeah, we need to do that. So it's,
Yeah.
You're right, we're changing to a new company, and it's time to make these
Yeah.
what they
And, you know,
should be.
when it's that, or you have to fix the water supply, you're going to go to the water supply. You know, this is really kind of a small potatoes, really, but it's nice if we have the details right. Thank you.
Would anybody else in the council like to weigh in before I open the public hearing? All right. At this point, I'd like to open up the public hearing and see if anybody from the public would like to weigh in on our fee schedule. Okay, I will close the public hearing and bring it back up here. Do I have a motion?
Mayor? Just a couple clarifications. I appreciate Councilmember Strong bringing this to staff's attention. So there's a couple, these aren't changes, but they just didn't show up in the new fee schedule. I think there's just a lot of stuff to format there. But again, just to make sure it makes it in there in the final draft here. So under use permit negative declaration, your draft shows a vacant fee that should be $1,200. That was included in our previous one. And then you notice the blank space under annexation, item 20, had a flat fee of $600. That should read as the engineering review fee that accompanies annexation applications. And then you were correct in recognizing that the 1.5 and 2-inch line should have a separate fee. The 2-inch line, I'm just going to the current fee schedule here, just give me a second.
And these are just things that the city gives for you to do that. It has nothing to do with how much work it takes or anything else. It's just for somebody to come out and check it. Is that correct?
To take out the permit to
You have
do
to ask the
work.
department.
Yeah, yes. Sometimes it increases based off of various components, but yeah, I mean, sometimes it'll be per hour, other times, so that would be how much work it is. But other times, if it's flat, it's just a flat rate.
Versus some of it had materials that I noticed, like the
Yeah.
lychee and some of the other stuff.
Exactly.
The so this is under water charge, water meter minimum charge, meter size in inches. The 1.5 inch meter size is a fee of $127.09. The 2 inch meter size in inches is $203.34. So again, this is just a carryover from the previous, no changes are being proposed, but just so it's clear, those fees didn't go to zero.
I'll move approval with the changes that Dusty just mentioned, and also authorizing staff to look for if there's any other missing headlines, or if the numbers, in the process of,
We'll do another
yeah,
final edit in the
but
format.
authorizing staff to make minor adjustments to fill any missing or typos or whatever. So I will move approval of this document with those changes and authorizing
revisiting
staff to
in
make
4
minor
months.
changes.
Are we going to come back and get this later?
I think we're passing it down, but we're going to come back in 4 months and get the updated on the business license.
But we're going to leave the others just the way they are.
With, staff's going to go ahead and add in the explanations.
Not a problem. That's
Yeah.
my answer, okay.
Okay.
Not a problem.
And the filling in the police, the code items and things like that. Just, yeah. So that's my motion.
Do I have a second? You know what? I will second it then, just to put it out there.
I have a question for Larry and Sabrina, if there are specific things that you're unhappy about.
I'm not unhappy about anything. I'm going to abstain because I have a financial interest in the outcome. There are several items. I have a project that I'll be applying for permits here for development, and the business licenses certainly impact me, so I don't feel it's appropriate for me to weigh in on the conversation. So it's not that I'm a nay or a yay, I just don't think it's appropriate.
Okay. What about Larry? Do you have any specific things that are,
I mentioned some of them, I didn't pick them out, but it's really incomplete for somebody to want us to pass these. I don't know what they mean. Just the thing about the patching, the things, it doesn't give you any size. They're going to give you a permit, but, if you're just doing let's say you're doing a sewer pipe and you're only cutting out a 4-inch hole out of it and then packing it, versus somebody that is drilling a hole for a downspout or something, they're totally different. And it doesn't say anything about that in there. It's just a permit. And just to come out and check it is not enough. That's the way I feel about it.
Okay, I'm hearing your concern. How can we address that in an efficient way? Do you want summaries for?
Well, I want to know if it's, let me get it out again. If it's like a repair on a sidewalk, which is the one that shows that it's a flat surface, which is the sidewalk.
a flat fee?
Okay, so
It's a flat fee.
if it's that, then that's one thing. But if it's somebody that's, if you have a driveway and you're patching it and that's at an angle, it doesn't say anything about that.
Let me take the opportunity. So the flat doesn't mean anything dimensional or anything related to the project itself. It's just a universal flat fee. It doesn't take into consideration the angle, orientation, size.
Oh, okay, so it's just a flat fee of, they're gonna come out
It's
for
a flat fee.
$100 a check.
Yes. Yes. Has
Okay,
nothing
that
to
even
do.
makes it worse
Okay.
for me.
All right. We made it worse.
I was just going to suggest, it might, I kind of feel the same way, that if you're just doing some tiny little piece of your sidewalk is very different than if you're doing 200 feet frontage of your entire lot, for example. And I wondered if it would be better to have that fee when it comes, well, have it be per lineal foot or a little graduated. If it's less than 20 linear feet, it's the flat fee. If it's more than that and up to 100, it's such and such, and if it's more than that, or something, because it does seem...
I was just pointing to
Yeah.
Dusty. Internally, we are looking at ordinance revisions relating to sidewalk provisions and how they relate to other permitting activities. The code right now is antiquated on the provisions and the expectations that the city has on property owners and developers and contractors. We recognize that's a problem, and we're looking to address that. We're looking at a couple examples. We have discussed that internally. We're not ready to present anything formally yet, but we would envision with changes to the language and the expectations that the city has on these property owners, there will be a difference in fee schedules. Right now, what you're looking at is kind of an outstanding placeholder that has been in place. It's not a new ordinance, or excuse me, a new fee that has been drafted into this fee schedule. It's kind of one that we've been operating under for years, I guess.
1995.
1995, good year.
Thank you.
I think just sitting here and listening, I'm not weighing in. I think that maybe a clarification from your department, Dusty, on what exactly is entailed, because I think sometimes when you look at this and you see there's a permit fee to do something, I'm going to be the property owner, I'm going to get the work done. What is it that the city is providing in exchange for that particular fee, whether it be the police department, whether it be the planning department? I think it's important to understand the service that you're providing that goes with the fee. That's not simply, you're doing this work, we're going to take whatever amount of money it is. But there is time and energy and cost to the city that pertains to any cost, whatever rate we put behind it. So maybe talking a little bit about what resources go into the fees is an important component.
Yeah, let me just jump in, and maybe I can tee it off for you, Dusty. Majority of these fees, we will never recoup what, salary costs, benefits, equipment, getting a vehicle out there. These are basically fees that, they're on paper, and it's kind of a system so we can ensure that we have the ability to issue a permit, verify that work that's being done either in the public realm or adjacent to the public realm is meeting criteria, and it's also protecting the interests of property owners to make sure, like any building inspection program. The philosophy that went into composing this fee schedule was not to generate revenue or cover complete costs. These fees would have been, 10 times as much. That was not the intent of this. It was just to have a nominal fee associated with various services that the city provides. Some of them are more straightforward. Some of them are accelerated business licenses and building permits. Majority of the other ones are just standard items that have been in the fee schedules for years, since 1995, and we're looking to amend slightly. Most of the changes are subtle. Majority of the fees are carried over.
But when you get a permit and they're presented to the county, and the county comes out, if you're going to re-roof your house and you get a permit, that costs you money when you go back and get your taxes the next time, because you re-roofed your house.
The assessments, yes.
That's correct.
Yes.
So I can see why people just kind of float by this.
Okay. I can't.
I mean, it's one thing to pay $50 to have somebody come out and check my roof and make sure that it's done correctly. It's another one if I'm going to pay, which way it is now, you're going to pay $4,000 or $5,000 for a comp roof anymore, and that's $5,000 on your place, and so it's a $5,000 increase in the betterment of your house.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing that bothers me, is not so much the $50 that we're charging, it's what the county charges when they come back and with my taxes.
My suggestion to you is next time we have 3rd District Supervisor John Haschek in the audience, ask him
Ask
that
him.
question.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we have a motion and a second, I being the one that seconded at this point, and planned abstention. So, call for the vote.
Councilmember Strong,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Abstain based on previous.
Stransky,
No.
Vice Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes? So how does this work?
So the motion fails.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, you have to have 3 positive.
Majorities.
yeah. So, can this
Entertain another motion, or?
Well, I guess I'm going to suggest since most of these fees are all the same, or very close, a few of them are graduated up a little bit based on inflation, maybe I could move that only the ones that have been adjusted for inflation that are different than our current fee schedule be adopted tonight, so that we get those in place.
It might be helpful if Councilmember Stransky helped craft the language, if he's the nay vote.
Well, I'm just trying to see if there's something we could do tonight. Oh, yeah, okay. that's another
Yeah,
good
maybe
thought.
work together.
Well, they're going to be the same. They're not going to drop back to 0. They're just going to be the same, and we're just approving the increase.
That's what I was just wondering, whether a motion to only adopt that portion that is changing the fees from what they are currently would just give us something to work with for the next few months until
Is it a majority?
kind of come back. Would that satisfy you, Larry? Because if not, we'll have the same dilemma. Just a thought.
Yeah, I'll go along with that until Haschek comes.
Well, that's the county's fees. We can't.
Well, but they're the one that signifies it, that's what I'm trying to say, is if you're gonna re-roof your house, and you come into the city to get your permit, that goes to the county, and the county comes out and says, you have a new roof on your house, and it costs you more money. So it's not the $50, it's the $2,000 that you have to pay at the county for.
However, anything we do tonight is not going to fix that problem because we do still have in place a fee schedule and a permit is required. And what the amount you pay for that particular local, relatively low-cost permit triggers the county to come and say, you're going to reassess your value. But
We can't. Just
So
give me some instructions.
nothing we do tonight is going to change that.
how about this for now? Instead of batting around and wordsmithing it, we have some questions that maybe staff can answer that maybe either at the next meeting or the subsequent one, that you could come back with something.
Yeah, and I think I'm more than willing to have an audience with Larry and address some of his concerns and take his comments to Supervisor Haschek. They're not going to change, we all know the county's not going to change their policy from what they're hearing from you, but at least put it on record.
Just table.
When you do that, explain to me what the tree maintenance permit is about.
I already got it down.
Okay,
All right.
so we're going to postpone.
They're going to come back with a cleaned up thing, and then we can get it done.
And we'll have all departments here to answer your questions.
Yes,
Thank you.
that would be helpful. Okay.
And the reason the engineering is at a conference, Anaheim, where was it? Somewhere out of the city. Universal City. Okay, there we go.
Cool.
Thank you for the guidance and the comments.
All right. At this point, I guess we are on the consent agenda.
No, you're on number 4.
Oh, number 4, sorry. Discussion possible action to adopt an ordinance and waive the second reading to amend Title 12 of the Willits Municipal Code, adding Chapter 12.10, entitled to approve and deny abandonments of city right-of-way. Presenting member Brian Vedder.
Okay, Mayor. council members. So what we're looking at is basically the adoption phase of an ordinance amendment that was presented to the council back in December, I think? I think it was in December, or early January. Once again, this is to correct a deficiency in our city code regarding the process to allow property owners as well as any other entity to request the abandonment of public right-of-ways, either platted or actually existing. In one case, it would be the same. Do a formalized process, and then ultimately heard by this council on the merits of the request and a decision rendered. The decision process has criteria that the council would have to establish findings for.
Are there any changes from I didn't notice any changes
No,
from the
there's no
last
changes.
revision. I just
There's no
wanted
changes.
to, I didn't see any yellow highlights.
And we have not received any comments from the general public. There is an
Yes.
email that is
Yes, we
printed
have.
out before you. This individual, Mr. Casagrande, was present at the first presentation. He has been working with community development regarding an item in his neighborhood. I think he may be jumping or premature in his request. This is not, and he's asking for something specific. Essentially, if the council adopts this ordinance and put it in place, this gives the mechanism for an individual like Mr. Casagrande to come before the council with a request.
And the one from Earth Treasures is attached to that?
Yeah,
Okay.
Omaya and Ken Sizemore?
yeah, they seem to be for it.
But once again, that is a specific item, specific to a neighborhood that would, if the council adopts this ordinance.
Would be a mechanism they
Yep,
could use.
Yep, you're not hearing these requests
Yeah.
tonight.
Yes.
They're just interested members of the public who are for this
Yes.
change. All right. So we are looking to waive the second reading and adopt ordinance 2023-1.
I so move.
All right. A motion and a, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right. Is this a public hearing or just a?
We need public comment. Public comment.
Yeah, so any members of the public that would like to weigh in? Hearing nothing? Thank you for those. All right.
I just have one comment on it. I don't have it in front of me anymore, but it seemed to me that this could end up being a pretty costly process to go through.
Yes.
And in some cases, the argument is that it's actually a public benefit to retire these things because they're a liability and the police have to police them and so forth. I don't want the fee on going through the process to relinquish a right-of-way to be so prohibitive that nobody does it, since the outcome could actually benefit us in the city.
Well, and also, don't they also have to have, PG&E was involved, there's some other thing they would have to.
Fire department.
Yeah, they would have to jump through some of those hoops.
Utilities would be notified. Essentially, the process, we received the request. It's a pretty extensive application package. And part of the application package is the responsibility both of the applicant and community development. We're routing it through community development, but it would be multiple departments within the city organization to review. But it's the responsibility of that applicant there's a form letter that we would identify who, if it's PG&E, it's another underground utility, telecommunication company that has utilities in that area, to get their acknowledgement of their utilities, their property in that area, their facilities, and if they have any concerns.
Yeah, and I realize it could very well benefit the applicant if they're going to get that right-of-way become their private property now.
Yes.
But if there's a sort of a balancing act of the public good that we get or the benefit, so that I just don't want it to be so costly that it's,
I got the impression it would be a cost recovery for our end.
It's basically, the way it's worded right now, there would be initial fee, basically a lump sum submitted as part of the application process, and that's going to essentially held as
Deposit.
retainer.
Yeah.
From my experience, and I've done several of these in my career, they can be expensive because you are, the costs that are involved with this type of application is retaining a surveyor, legal descriptions, legal work. That's really where it comes down to, because a lot of these are remnant areas or an old alley that no one knows where it exists. Property lines or structures creep in, so it does get a little complicated.
I think, I'm not talking about the city getting their costs of processing the permit.
No.
I'm talking about discouraging anyone from actually, taking advantage of this ability to abandon a right-of-way. If it's in the city's best interest to abandon that right-of-way, I don't want the private citizen who happens to be adjacent to it to get stuck with, a $20,000, $50,000.
Well,
whatever.
let's just say council adopts this, and there's an applicant that brings forward, and it's, could be a pretty extensive fee associated with it, but staff determines there is a benefit to the city. There may be a recommendation when it's presented to have some cost recovery or some compensation back to that individual if we can itemize the benefit the city would receive.
Okay, well, I would just suggest that maybe that flexibility get acknowledged in the actual document so that,
Okay.
if one of these people comes in and says, I just, this alley is being used by, for trash, whatever, Anyway, that's my only concern, but I like the idea of having the process codified and filling that need.
Your comments are noted.
So I have a motion by Larry. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Oh, thank you. I apologize. All right, and nobody from the public, so at this point, call for the vote.
Council.
Before you call for the vote, can you get a little clarification on how you would word adding Madge's comments to the document?
Basically, we can go back to the application process. We could put a sentence or a phrase or some type of disclaimer in there that, and I'm terrible wordsmithing on the fly here, but essentially say that the council at the time of adoption of this ordinance recognizes that they didn't want to make the cost burdensome to an applicant, and if there's benefit to the city, there may be some consideration for reimbursement.
And that would come to the city council.
Yes,
for
as part of the
determination.
application submission through the staff to the council.
So the person making the application would come back and say, hey, and on another note, city, you're going to get a benefit. Honestly, I think, and I'm not trying to rub salt in what Larry said, but if there was a piece of property between me and Larry, and Larry didn't want it, and I wanted it because of all these other issues, ultimately, when it gets reassessed, I'm going to get some more property, and there go them property tax assessments again. So,
And I totally agree. And so this for clarification, and maybe I didn't address it properly, but I just want the council to understand, when an application packet is brought to you for final determination, there will be a staff recommendation associated with it, benefits, the pros and cons. And at that time, we would identify there's an opportunity, potentially this thing ballooned, we came with hidden costs, and there's benefit to the city or another entity. We recognize that, we would recommend that the council offer some type of reimbursement.
I'm okay with that motion, including a small blurb on the bottom, but I don't want it to be so vague that honestly, each time an application comes before us, that we feel the pressure. We live in a small community, and I don't think that regardless of who sits on this council, that we should be moving fees around arbitrarily based on the people that are before us. Because if we're all honest, there are many times when we're sitting here looking out at the crowd, and it's our neighbors, and they're asking us to do things. And I always appreciate when the process is so very
ministerial.
Very clear, I'm doing my job, this is what you expected, this is what you're going to get, that the more clear we can make it in advance, the less it leaves for the impression that the council is showing favoritism, especially when it comes to financial gain or not. That makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So I just prefer that things are very clear from the get-go. If you decide you want to do a right-of-way, you understand that the city's going to have a cost recovery system, you agree to it. I would imagine that if you're going to invest in it, that you and your neighbors are generally in agreement. You know the risk, just like with anything else, you know what your risk is. You decide to make an educated decision on the risk. You either take it or you don't. And it takes a lot of that discretion away from us. I don't think that this council sometimes should have that much discretion. You know, we are a small community. It can be easily swayed one way or the other based on who you know or how passionate you are or how many people gather in the room. So I just would like to take that element, for me anyway, that's my preference out of it. So, sorry.
No.
I hear where you're coming from. I like things a little bit more black and white.
I can assure that the ordinance as drafted, and I know everyone here has reviewed it.
So I'm
is-
okay
is
with
pretty-
like a small,
It's pretty
but-
black and white. It's a pretty
Okay.
mechanical
Yeah.
process.
Okay.
I'm just addressing the comments
Yeah.
made by Madge about, if a request, we don't want the request to become, or the process to become too burdensome that an applicant who actually has merit and would benefit is deterred by the costs involved. We recognize that, and we'll work around that. We'll be very honest and forthright with an applicant.
Okay. As long as there's a clear understanding that it wouldn't be the norm to ask for cost recovery to be, set aside, that sort of thing, unless there's significant, benefit to the city, so that there isn't any misunderstandings.
But I frankly don't see that we'll have too many of these. I can think of a couple spots where people have talked about it where some people are yeah, that would be nice to take that, and some people are happy to let the city continue dealing with the problem as they put it. So I don't see it's going to be that much of a deal.
A question, is it possible that the city itself would decide to initiate some of these after looking at some of the
Yes.
alleys?
I think
So-
they have. I look at the street I'm on, and at some point in the past, the city abandoned Esther Lane and where I live, and
Did any property owner ever object when they got an extra 20 feet in their backyard or something?
see, in our purpose, we ended up with easements as opposed to,
Yeah, so this policy is crafted with the intent that if the city is working on a project, or the city recognizes, we may do, if the council adopts this policy, we may do an inventory of these remnant legacy right-of-ways, and may bring forward to you in a wholesale, and go from there.
Okay, great.
right.
And I appreciate what Sabrina was saying too. Just, we don't want to have everybody, pressure us on some little loophole that reduces their fees. It would just get to be chaos.
All right. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Strong.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Stransky.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes.
Thank you, and I know he's not here tonight, I just want to acknowledge the effort Scott Perkins of SHN has put into this. He was great to work with. He was here at the first session.
Yeah.
And subsequently, I just want to say he enjoyed our meeting. He thought it was well-run, and there was a lot of valid comments expressed by the council at that time. So, and it's his line of work to sit in a lot of council meetings.
All right, so now we are at the consent agenda, item 5. The city council considers matters listed under the consent agenda as routine. The council will take action with one single motion and one roll call vote. The council member requested removal of items from the consent calendar, separate discussions. This time, we only have the following items that are before the council for approval, and city council minutes from February 22nd, 2023. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion, that we take the minutes of February 8th.
22nd.
Wait, is that the 8th?
No, the
Yes,
22nd.
February 8th, 2023, and approve them.
It's February 22nd is what's on.
22nd.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much.
I'll second the
I
motion.
got to put on my glasses first. Thank you.
Would anybody from the public like to comment on our consent calendar? All right, bringing it back up.
Councilmember Strong,
Aye.
Rodriguez,
I have to abstain, I wasn't present.
Yes.
Dransky.
Yes. All right. Monthly activity reports, I believe we have some new business licenses, and those are available for the public if they'd like to read through the packet. And they're posted online for February 2023. And then item 7, commissions, agencies, and authorities. We sit concurrently as a planning commission and the Willits successor agency, and we have no business before us. So we're now on item 8,
Actually,
and we were going to bring,
we want to adjust the schedule of the agenda and bring item 9A forward to give the applicant an opportunity to not sit through the rest of this.
is the council okay with by
Yeah.
consensus doing that? All right. So, take it away, Taylor.
And there is a PowerPoint that will be on before you, or behind you.
Good evening, everybody. Council members, Mayor, my name is Taylor Clary. I'm the city planner. And tonight we're going to be discussing use permit number U2101 for the Curtis Land residence. The project is located at 325 Robert Drive, just south of Robert Drive itself, along the roadside, in a predominantly industrial area of town. The 3-acre parcel is fully paved and consists of storage units, associated office structures that all support the existing mini storage facility, Cougar's Closet 2, owned and operated by the applicant, Curtis Lyon himself. A fence line running from north to south along almost what appears to be the middle of the parcel separates the parcel into 2 sections that are fully fenced. An equipment rental storage facility is located east of the parcel, Willits Storage. And a fence equipment storage facility is located just west of the parcel. Due north is the locomotive storage operation facility, and south is an abutting parcel that is densely wooded. It's about 7 acres, and it supports 1 single-family residence with its own access off Cropley Lane. The site and all surrounding parcels, as you can see designated in what looks like purple-pink on the screen, is all MH, heavy industrial. And according to the municipal code, MH designation for heavy industrial is intended to apply to areas devoted to normal operations and industries, subject only to such regulations as are needed to control nuisances and protect the surrounding areas. The application for a use permit is being sought to facilitate construction of a 400 square foot single-family residence to be occupied by an employee assigned to maintaining the existing storage facility of Cougar's Closet 2. Thus, the caretaker unit will be associative and directly supportive to the existing mini storage facility. The reason the applicant needs a conditional use permit is that pursuant to Willits Zoning Code Section 1728030, establishment of a single-family residence as an accessory to a permitted use requires a use permit in the heavy industrial zone. Staff interprets examples to include caretaker housing, and although not directly defined in the municipal code at this time, it's often defined as a dwelling used for the accommodation of a person employed, say a caretaker, janitor, night watchman, etc., by an existing industrial or commercial use currently operating on site. The applicant intends to provide caretaker housing by form of a prefabricated modular home, 400 square feet. These are photos that were submitted as a potential model that the applicant intends to install. The caretaker unit will be placed near an existing ADA accessible restroom on site near the western gate. and the unit itself will be placed upon engineered slab, an engineered concrete slab. And 2 new parking spaces will be established, one adjacent to the existing ADA space and one on the other side of the ADA restroom just west. Like I said, land uses in the immediate area are all industrial. It includes industrial operations, storage facilities, supportive businesses. The nearest off-site residence is just south of the yellow square you can see. It's about 550 feet south. But all of these areas, like you saw on the zoning map, are all zoned similarly as heavy industrial. To ensure the establishment of the residence does not present future land use incompatibilities or conflicts, it's recommended that that several conditions be implemented that relate directly to caretaker housing. The caretaker unit must be associative and directly supportive to the current industrial use. Occupancies shall be limited to just the caretaker and the household. The design of the caretaker unit shall be consistent and uniform with the design of the associated industrial use. Further, it is recommended that there are more conditions pertaining solely to safety. One being that the unit must meet all applicable building and fire codes, to the governing agency, either City of Willits Building Department or California HCD, which is the governing agency for modular homes. So they have to meet all of those conditions. The second one is the recommendation that a video camera system be implemented. Am I on the right side? Yes. That a video system be implemented that records the building entrances and the parking lot, and that it be maintained in working condition at all times to ensure that there's safety implemented and that we can keep track of that. Public noticing was sent out on February 17, 2023 by physical mail to the property owners' mailing addresses. And 10 parcels fell within that noticing sphere because they are significantly large parcels, and there were duplicates of ownership, so 8 letters were sent out. And unfortunately, we did not receive any public comment at this time. Staff recommends approval of this permit based on the findings and subject to the recommended conditions of approval. So I welcome any questions you may have, and this concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Do we have any questions up here?
Pretty clear.
Would the applicant like to make any statement or?
Yes, I put an office in the,
Would you mind coming up so the TV audience can?
I put an office in the storage, the business park section of the property, and then I bought the property next door and built the mini storage. I have my office for both places in the business park. I've got 26 cameras over the whole site. I was paying $650 a month for the internet services. I was one of the first people in town to have fiber optic cable system built to my system so I could actually see my camera today. I found out that I needed someplace for security because even though I have cameras, there's nobody there to help. So this is the way I was going to solve this, my problem. Other than that, that's about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I like it when applicants. Oh, sir, we get your name.
Oh, I'm sorry?
Your name, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry, Curtis Lyon.
Curtis Lyon, thank you, sir.
Sure.
All right. All right, would anybody else from the public like to speak on this? All right. Any other questions up here?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward, and I think that it's in line with the area and doesn't pose any unnecessary problems, so I have no issue.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Doing a good job.
Yeah.
I just have to commend you, staff, for putting the address and the description in the agenda item. Because a couple of times we've had agenda items where it has all the conditional use permit number, da-da-da, blah, 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 and it never tells you where the project is. I mean, it would if you read the whole staff report. But anyways, it's very good to have the agenda descriptions locate and describe the project. Thank you.
Taylor, I had a quick question. The one residence there, is that in the county or the city?
It's in city limits, but their entrance is off Cropley Lane outside of city limits. It's
Okay.
the most
I think
western parcel you can get, so
Oh.
almost, but still in city limits.
Okay, I was trying to figure out where it was, and that kind of gives me an idea. Okay. All right, at this point, I will look for a motion.
Yeah, I'd be happy to make a motion to approve.
I second it.
Right, seconded by Larry. All right. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Strong?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Lance, for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you, Taylor. Good job.
Thank you. All right. Now we will go to item 8A, City Manager Reports and Recommendations.
The first item is a request from the California League of Cities. Basically, they do us a great service in tracking what is happening in Sacramento. And every council member is aware of what the league services they do for us. This is an item in return. They're asking for cooperation and assistance from the council. Basically, Initiative 21-004281, it is an attempt by large corporations within the state who have significant operations within the state or conduct a lot of business, and some of the documentation that's in the packet identifies, at least at this time, some of the major players that are behind this. What these corporations are attempting to do is really question the ability of local jurisdictions, municipalities in the state of California to proceed with tax measures for various reasons. Either, tax measures for public safety, law enforcement, fire protection, roads, streets, operation, general fund activity. This is basically an attempt by these large corporations to say enough is enough. California is getting too expensive to operate and conduct business as we see as necessary. Unfortunately, in the hierarchy of the state, they went after the most prone, or the entities that are least able to defend themselves. These corporations should be approaching the governor's office and the legislature with much more fair evaluations and options to pursue, relief for their operations. Essentially, what this initiative would do would basically, starting from January 1st of 2022, any tax measure local that was passed would have to be re-presented to the public and basically go through another ballot measure. And if that ballot measure failed, whatever funds was accrued has to be released back. There's a lot of, the corporation, there's a lot of effort behind this. I'm not saying that the state does need some type of review of taxing structure. This is not the appropriate place to start that discussion. Let's just say in 2 years that the city of Willits, if this initiative was passed, the city of Willits looked at Measure K is safe because it predates the 22 date. But if we had to pass a measure for parks or something specific, there's higher tests and higher standards that need to be met. So the league is just asking for adoption of a resolution by the City Council, acknowledging that you have been briefed and aware of the concerns that this initiative would do to your authority to operate your cities.
Okay. Just a question quickly. The list in the attachments there of all the measures that passed, basically many or most of those under this, if this passes at the state level, would be invalidated. They have to reauthorize them.
Revalidate themselves.
And if they didn't get more than a majority vote, does it increase the?
I believe it, yes.
It increases
So they'd have to
the
go back to
threshold.
the voters.
Yes.
And if it didn't pass the second time, then all of the revenues that had already been collected,
Has
So
to be
like-
it's a
redispersed.
disaster.
So like Measure O is listed on there, I noticed.
And K, what about K? Anyway, it sounds like a disaster. Horrible.
So apparently, just additional background, this has been floating around a little bit, but it has gained momentum within the last year. And the league and their staff are very concerned because this would, maybe some larger cities could get around it, but communities, Ukiah is very concerned. The discussion that the city managers in Mendocino and Lake County, we agree that this is a bad thing for our communities. This would really hit us hard. We're all basically small, and we rely heavily on tax measures to support not only basic operations to general fund activities to supplement general fund, but also anything special.
Do you want a motion yet, or are you going to?
Well, I just want to know if anybody from the, up here,
I was just waiting for you to go to the public.
yeah. Would anybody from the public like to weigh in? Okay, back up here then. Anybody else from the council want to weigh in? I just want to say that when we propose something, whether it was our measure or Measure O on the county, that whether it's something we put together or a citizens group puts together, then it goes out to the voters and things that have been voted out there. It's not done in some back room somewhere, that it's done out in the open. And this kind of hopes to roll back some of the, kind of throw a wrench in some of the local initiatives all over the state.
I move approval of the staff recommendation.
I'll second the motion to adopt the resolution opposing the initiative.
All right.
Councilmember Strong,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Zirinsky.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. And now we are on item B, approve a new description for a senior planner for placement in the Community Development Department.
No, we're not.
8B.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, 8B.
Oh, sorry. 8B, discussion possible approval of reorganization of Public Works Engineering into the services. Sorry.
I can see where you get confused by that. I mean,
Yeah.
we're looking at staff and organization functionality. Thank you. Item 8B is, I don't know where I want to begin with. I got a lot of thoughts in my head relating this, and I'm going to try to not go too far into details on what we're trying to do. Let me break this down and provide the big picture. The big picture here is my assessment that watching and observing how public works / engineering functions, it's not ideal. They're good people, they're good staff, they're doing the best they can, but I think right now we have to improve the structure they work in and what they can expect from the organization in support of their mission. And the first component of this is to address the department head position, which right now is held by Scott Herman. I appointed him in that position. He has subsequently said that, it's probably not the best fit, and he's holding it as an acting individual right now. And I acknowledge, Scott has a lot of strong skills and talents, but I think we need a stronger component in managerial skills, as well as accountability of how our staff responds to direction, guidance, and project management. So what we're looking to do is, there's a little bit of a misnomer right now between Public Works and engineering, what is engineering folded into Public Works? Is Public Works folded into engineering? It's a little bit, since I've been here, it's a little bit confusing, the lines get blurred. And it's blurred because the two units work well together, and that's not a bad thing. That is actually a pretty darn good thing to have, but the problem is from a structural component, there's not strong management component there where myself as the city manager can understand that there is projects are being done as approved by the council, as approved by budgetary allocations, once again, that the council approves, and that ultimately the public can have confidence that, like we were saying, tax measures, dollars that we accumulate are being accurately applied to various projects. The other aspect of this is a division of units within this revised this organization component. We would separate out utilities, which would be water distribution, wastewater, processing, water production as well. Streets, which is a key component as well, and that's a big responsibility. And then the new element would be parks and facilities. And that is something that I've heard from the council, that we need to put more effort into our facilities, our parks. And that's something we've been turning the corner on. We've been putting revenue into them, working with staff and looking at different options for parks, facilities. We're looking at putting money into them. We're also looking at planning opportunities where we can define and identify opportunities for improvements and enhancement in those facilities. But we can talk about and we can put things, we can acquire things and put them in these areas. But if I don't have staff to manage them and make sure that work is being done correctly and to standards, then it becomes problematic. The other aspect of this is the way we define capital improvement projects. What we're looking to do right now is the other big the other big component of this proposal is to create a capital CIP administrator, capital improvements plan administrator. And the focus there would be that position is basically what we have now as a project manager, but it would reduce the responsibility of that position to oversee projects and to combine project tracking, project identification, basically taking funding opportunities either that have already been allocated through the budgeting process or looking at some different grant opportunities, working with that new department head and the superintendent level positions to identify opportunities and put projects together, basically program them, have that department head present them to myself and then ultimately for the council for approval.
Any questions?
Yeah, I just think what's happening is that I think that we're getting too top-heavy, and this is just going to add to that.
That's a fair assessment. I don't necessarily agree with that. Actually, this is actually defining the role of a department head, and it's also not acknowledging that person has to be an engineer. It would be great if we had a licensed engineer apply to that job, that position, but it also has greater latitude in someone who may be a community development specialist or a engineer or a facility manager at a larger municipality. They reached a point where they're not going to advance any further or they want to come back and work in a smaller community. This opportunity for the department head gives myself greater flexibility to utilize, go out and capture greater skill sets that we can bring back into this organization. We don't have that ability right now. We haven't had that ability for a long time in that department. The department we had some turnover, we had some departures this is a great opportunity now, it's a great time to implement a new policy, a new plan that utilizes the strength that we already have within our organization, but it also creates some structure so we can introduce an element of management.
You know, I just want to say, the way I look at it, we did have a captain who feels his strengths aren't quite being a captain, and he'd like to be a lieutenant or something. And this would basically install a captain and then have the lieutenants underneath them, to that effect, to use that terminology.
It's basically looking at the key components of our city facilities, utilities, streets, parks, and facilities, breaking them up, placing an individual responsible for those areas, and then have them directly accountable to a department head, who, I'll be honest, I'm not looking for purely an engineer in that position. I'm looking for someone who understands budgeting, management, staffing, and engagement with the council and other staff members. That's a skill set that I have recognized that we need in that position, and that's what I'm asking the council to consider.
I don't know, we've had extensive conversations for many months about this, and it all comes back to the skill set and the flexibility. We're in a small community, and I recognize that this vision is a good fit for our city, so I support it.
Matt?
Yeah, I do. I support it in principle anyway. A lot of it comes down to who the individuals are and whether, especially if you're bringing somebody in new as a manager over people who've had middle level or whatever managerial positions, and making sure that all works for everybody. And so, you know, a lot of it's in the personnel. But I had a question too. So I noticed that for that new services and facilities director, you actually have a salary that's less than what the public works director is currently budgeted for, and that one of the currently utility person in charge of that is going to actually be paid less.
There will be adjustments.
And could you attract somebody that at that level that's less?
Realistically, I would say no. I'm not going to mislead the council. These are just initial numbers. I do believe that if we get the green light to proceed, that the salary will need some adjustment to attract the type of individual that we're looking for, that we need.
Yeah, and I guess one of my main concerns is that we have a lot of talented and hardworking people on staff already, and I want to have whatever transition we're going through acknowledge and feel like they are getting the kind of position they want and not being either shunted aside or demoted. And that's all in how it gets played out. It's a lot of...
This proposal does not
demote anybody.
It does not demote anyone who's not already acknowledged where their strong skill sets belong. It actually, like I said earlier, refines some of the skill sets that we already have that some people, I'll be honest, don't recognize. They have some hidden talents that it doesn't project. They don't present that very well. But my tenure here, I was able to observe that, hey, yeah, they got some unique skill sets and they have some attributes that we can really leverage. But they need to be slightly adjusted in their position and their roles and their responsibilities for the city. Engineering, public works, this model that we're working under, that I inherited, has been in place for a while, but we've been hemorrhaging staff members. We're not at the staff levels we were. One of the things I've advocated for engineering is not to do internal design work. It's not efficient. And we have gotten out of that. So we are relying more on consultants, but they're more effective for a size organization that we are, to basically take our instructions, our demands, our requests for specific projects and put them on paper for us.
Yeah. I also, acknowledge that you have been steering the ship for a couple of years now, and we basically found your leadership to be very important for the health of the organization. And so I'm putting a lot of trust in you, your ability to, to implement something like this with appropriate, finesse. That's really, if it were just somebody coming in new on high and saying, we're going to change, we're going to put you over here, and we're going to put this guy that we never, brand new over your head or whatever, I think that would be really foolhardy, or, it would ruffle a lot of feathers. But I know your style of being able to really talk this over with everybody and find the appropriate place that they're going to actually be happier in their job if their skills match the position that they're getting. So I'm just acknowledging that I think I am taking my cues from your leadership and your recommendations on this. If you think this is going to work, it's going to work.
No pressure then, huh?
So you believe in the vision too?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it has also, I've noticed that it's hard to know when a project is under the leadership of engineering versus the leadership of public works or facilities or whatever. This gives it a lot more clarity of who's in charge of what. So that's why I say, in theory, I think this is a really good idea.
It's an attempt to be more efficient, and I think that's one thing I've heard during my tenure here from the council, and it is underlined or emphasized throughout the adopted goals. Efficiency, staff, use both internally that we already have, and when we do recruit, we have to be very careful in how we recruit and the type of individual. We're a small family. Like any family, there's disagreements and squabbles, but we have each other's backs to the best of our ability, and we look out for each other. And when we do decide to bring someone on, there's a lot of consideration for that.
Well, at this point, I'll see if anybody from the public wants to weigh in. Would you like to come up here and state your name? Well, that's how the public can, so it's not so to put you on the spot, it's so that out here you might sound like Charlie Brown's teacher out there.
No, that's okay. Hi. I'm not clear of why, the reason we want to divide two important departments. I personally I'm a newcomer to the town. I wasn't planning. I come here just to know the players in town. In my experience, Mr. Herman and I believe we have part-time engineering in town. They were very instrumental in solving my issue, and they acted promptly and they provided the solution. So I'm not clear. Do you want to divide these facilities because of finances? Why don't we promote somebody from within who's familiar with the town and the rules and the regulation to that facilities? And I think the engineering department needs to stay with the planning. I believe we have a planning department. And my understanding, we are really weak, I could be wrong, but that's what I was told, on getting grants. So I'm not clear why you want to divide the engineering department and put it under
So can I get
services
can I
and
get you to
facilities.
Can I also get you to state your name? I apologize.
Oh, sure. It's Ragda Zakaria, like rag, da Zakaria.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, I'm not clear why we want to split this. In my opinion, this is a very solid, they know what the town needs, what needs to be done, what it can be done. And my understanding is they're very solid. So why do you want to divide them and put them in a different? Is it finances? Or I heard you say leadership?
There's anything we decide or any action that we take, initiate, there's always the financial component that we have to consider. There are some savings here. There may be additional savings, and there may be additional costs as what I'm looking to do. I'll get to your question, but I want to just put this out there for the council and your benefit. If this proposal is green lighted by the council tonight, then I will start the recruitment for a department head. And basically, I don't want to tie their hands. I want to keep this somewhat fluid, this model, so I want to rely on their expertise on how they want to set up a department. That's one of the recruitment attractions, is coming in and, within the boundaries that I have established, that they can configure a department to best suit our needs. So that's just kind of an overarching element there. But to answer your questions specifically, we have engineering department, but we don't have an engineer on city employment.
Correct.
Those individuals that you mentioned, they're not engineers, and it's kind of a misnomer that, we have an engineering department, we don't have an engineer. We have an engineer through contract, who is very knowledgeable, very thorough, but it's basically, we pay for that service. It's not held in-house. Engineering right now, they're short-staffed, and they, for a while there, their mission was meandering of what they needed to do. And my recommendation through this proposal is to basically, internally, these staff members have some really good, unique skills. And I want to reposition them within this organization to utilize those skills, and then the areas that they don't need to worry about, and unfortunately, those responsibilities which dropped into their areas of concern incrementally or by nature, just how things mission creep, essentially. I want to avoid that. So that's kind of the logic there. Grants, that's going to be a topic that hopefully comes up later tonight. The engineering department was never really assigned to pursuing grants. That was with the community development department. The community development department, yes, Dusty Dooley there, basically had the obligation to look for grants that help fuel projects that engineering public works would implement. We have another plan that we want to do with grants, and that's what's going to happen.
And that's exactly what Mr. Herman told me. There is a lot of projects this town needs, but we don't have grants. And
not everything's funded through grants.
Okay. Or they don't have the funds to do it.
No city never has enough funds to do everything on their wish list.
Sure,
But
I come from a large city council, so I understand the dynamics.
But what we need to do is, we do have a very good set of planning documents and a focus, our wish list, are what we would like to do for improvements throughout the community. And from my perspective, for us to accomplish that is to add an element of structure to engineering and public works, because right now they are separate. Engineering doesn't oversee public works, and public works doesn't oversee engineering. The public works director, the department head that we had in the past, kind of blended the two, but didn't quite oversee them as defined as this proposal has it.
So, okay, so I'd better do what we agreed to do before you bring a new person on. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else out there? All right, I'll bring it back up. While I see what Larry has to say, I think right now it is, just like Matt said, it has a lot to do with who's in those positions, and frankly, I'm for it in concept like Councilmember Rodriguez says, but at the same time, I want to give Brian the opportunity to work on this. It's all going to depend on who he gets as to whether or not it works out, and so I want to give him the tools to do that. That's just kind of my say. Again, it's all going to depend on who we get in there, if we get somebody. If not, I'm sure Ryan will be back with another proposal. So, again,
I'd be willing to make a motion to approve the reorganization of Public Works Engineering into the Services and Facilities Department.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Councilmember Strong?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stransky?
No.
Vice Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Now we are on 9B.
Actually, or 8C.
Oh, 8C.
Oh, it's a tighter hearing from me.
No, go ahead. Verbal report.
No, I'll just make it real quick, briefly here. Fortunately, unfortunately, the community was impacted by the wintry weather the last week or so. Public Works, as we mentioned, have been doing a diligent job in making sure everything's safe. Unfortunately, I was out of the community when we get a snowstorm, and I've been the greatest advocate for snow here, so that's kind of frustrating. But I don't know, that's Murphy's Law there or something like that. But I just want to acknowledge basically the crews and administration staff and overseeing in my absence what was happening, managing the facilities, making sure everything was open, and addressing concerns from the public. Dispatch and City Hall was receiving a lot of calls from property owners and residents asking what was going to happen and what was going on, so that was a good thing. FEMA is still going to have a presence here for Dolores, help me out here
Till
too.
Sunday. They'll
Sunday.
be cleaning. Sunday's their last day, and Monday they'll be moving up, cleaning up.
So, once again, they're anxious. They want to hear and speak to people. They want to hear the concerns that property owners have with the storm damage to their properties. So I strongly encourage any residents or even people out in the county, come down and talk to the FEMA representative. And finally, got good news today from Dolores, Manny, and Davey. They attended a FEMA workshop today on public assistance for municipalities or public entities, and there's a good opportunity that some of our costs that we incurred going back to the end of December relating to the first round of wintry weather, which was unfrozen, and now that's extended into the frozen. So we'll be looking to itemize our expenses and seeking additional assistance from FEMA on those. So that's what I have.
I just want to take the opportunity, since you talked about Public Works out there. The time I remember, I don't remember any city trucks blading the side streets. They usually took care of some of the steeper streets and all that, and I kept hearing noises coming on the side streets. I was walking my dog, and next thing I know, I see a city blade to pick up out there, kind of scooping snow off
The plow and the sander is working overtime.
And I
Our
know
little Fisher plow is doing wonders.
But I know they were doing Sherwood Road and some of the other places in the city, so I was real happy to see that.
Yes.
So, all right, so
I would
now,
like to thank the Public Works. They put gravel and everything up and around our area, which is kind of steep, and they did a really good job on that. Very good.
That's what I have.
all right, so now, sorry to keep trying to cut you off there, Brian, but now 9B. Approve a new description for senior city planner for placement in the Community Development Department effective March 9th. Presenting member Karen Stevenson.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Gonzalez, council members. The reason for this position is to basically provide a subject matter expert for long-range planning. They will deal mostly with controversial and technological complex assignments. They may serve as the project leader on multifaceted projects requiring a high degree of independent judgment. They will assist our current city planner, still here with us, and work on current and advanced planning activities, the development of implementation of grant programs. They will be a project manager for complex development applications and work with community groups, state and local agencies, city council, and other public and private partnerships to accomplish community development goals. We were unsuccessful in filling the community development specialist position, which part of the job was to manage the grants. We were able to get a lot of them, but just not able to get somebody to step in where our predecessor left. So we would like to, rather than backfill that position, bring in a city planner to assist community development. And the difference is only a $17,000 annual loaded wage. So I think community development is in dire need of the manpower. And they do a great job and they deliver. But we do need more people here to get the work done and stay on top of things so that our community development director isn't working 90 hours a week to get it all done.
You mean slacking off?
Just while you're gone.
Yeah, just how you're going.
Thank you. I just want to contribute to this as well. As we were talking about the reconfiguration of Public Works, this is an attempt, this has been several long discussions with Dusty. We recognize, we had a lot of good candidates for the community development specialist, but no one really fit. You know, they didn't leave us tingling afterwards saying we need to bring these people in. And unfortunately, that's just the nature of the way the market was, trying to attract the individuals. So in discussions with Dusty, we recognize what can we do. We know we need to have staff within community development. One of the things I've heard from the council, and it also has been very apparent to me since I've started here, is that we could use additional planning firepower in community development. And this position would look at comprehensive planning, long range, special projects, looking at community engagement, working with different groups and organizations and entities who all have some type of common goal to see betterment of this community. This is a position that would bring a level of expertise into the community development department. This is a position that Dusty can utilize and branch off and go in directions that I feel that we haven't been successful. Dusty's teed off a lot of projects, but we need to start rolling them out. We need to get that individual with the expertise to go out and make things happen and move across a much broader front than we have. Basically, my discussion with Dusty was, tell me what resources he needs, staffing-wise, and to complete that mission. Maybe I'm showing my preference coming from planning and community development, but this is what we need. We need to get community development fully staffed and rolling along. Taylor, like we just saw earlier today, has done an exceptional job stepping up, but now we need another planner position. This position will also do some project management. There's some overlap with other departments. They are going to do a good portion of grant work too. We're not letting that go, but basically we're just changing the focus of that position to bring greater planning expertise to this community to do some great things.
Is this a new position?
Yes.
Thank you.
We're not going to backfill the one position because we feel this will give us the best advantage to be successful.
Thank you.
Well, I guess I'm just want to clarify that. It's a new position, but it's instead of filling the one.
Yes. So we're not going to, so if once again, if the council approves to the concept that is being presented and discussed tonight, we will stop, and we have essentially stopped recruiting efforts for a community development specialist, and we will start the process to bring in a senior planner.
And this is going to be, counting benefits and everything, $17,000 more than it would have been to fill that?
Well, base salary. No, we're not talking about benefits.
We didn't do motivation.
So
fiscal impact of 17,000, so it increases, trading that one position for this increases our cost. And that may be as much an incentive for the recruiting process as changing the exact job description, because anybody in a small department, they're going to be wearing whatever hat you need to have them wear. And so in a way, it's the quality of somebody that could recruit somebody at the salary range that can be flexible in a small department and do all the different jobs. I certainly wouldn't support it if it was in addition to the previous position, but I think we need that planning personnel.
I have a question to whoever can answer it. So would this help moving along our general plan? That's one question, and the other one is, would this help decrease at times our reliance on maybe some consultant for projects that we maybe throw to a consultant now? Is there a benefit to that?
Right, so, I mean, currently, we're under the process of updating the land use element of our general plan, and likely, one of the next big projects for council to look at prioritizing is going to be the comprehensive update of the zoning code. And city's done a good job of updating our housing element onto the land use element, but the reality is our general plan hasn't been comprehensively updated since 1992, so we still have a lot of work to do. So absolutely, this position would be expected to take a lead role on future general plan amendments. That would be a perfect example of the type of work that we would expect this individual to assist with. And yeah, certainly the hope would be that they could then take on some additional duties that we currently rely on consultants to complete. I don't think this is going to allow us to completely wean ourselves off of that, but
Yeah, I get it.
But yeah, there certainly is a
But with only two of you in the
trade-off
department
there.
right now, it means a lot of stuff gets kicked to consultant. That
Absolutely.
Would anybody else like to weigh in?
I just want to share my thoughts. I know that when we first approved the grants rider, it was a bit of a risk for us at the time, and we didn't see it as like a long-term financial investment, and we were kind of looking to see how it would pan out in a year or two, and I think that it was successful. And so I'm a little nervous about redirecting those funds when there was a clear intent at the time of what we were going to do with them. But at the same time, I understand the investment in the planning, and that there's other opportunities that are equally as valuable as maybe some of those grants were. I think I'm just looking for maybe some from city manager, and I feel like you've been pretty good about giving that, but just some reassurance that we're not going to slow down on our grant applications, that this is still going to be very much priority in this person who's going to take on this role and securing additional grants.
Acknowledging your comments, true. I want to backtrack a little bit. The previous applicant, or the previous individual who held that position, was not a planner. What he did for grants was a great thing. By approving this request, we're going to still cover grants, and we're going to expand our ability to do planning. We're going to be, Dusty, will have an individual up there that has the expertise to not only take a grant and apply for it and manage it, but also utilize it. They may be, applying for grants for parks, and they will be implementing that program where the previous individual was not. And that was a little bit of a hang-up. He was farming work out to engineering, public works, and it was getting to be, almost a spidery web type effect of, getting a grant and then passing it along. This is going to give us a greater ability to manage what we obtain, manage and apply it directly to our needs through community development. And that's where we think, Dusty and I, see the value in having someone who has grant expertise, but also can sit there and say, go out and engage the public and identify projects. And like you saw with Taylor, do graphic illustrations, putting content from codes and ordinances onto basically images to convey that. This is going to accelerate our ability in community development to do that type of work. Where before I think we were one trick pony, now we're going to be 3 or 4 ponies pulling that wagon.
And I think like with the grant writer, when I see success a year, 2, 3 years from now, I'll continue to support it. But if I find that it kind of got absorbed, but I didn't feel any real value that came from it, then I'll be honest, I might be in position when it comes budgetary time where I might say, This is a position I don't think that is serving the city. It is my hope, though, that the intent is also what we get in with the end product. Because I do see the vision, and I do support the overall idea.
The other, just being very blunt about it, that position's been vacant for coming up on 2 years now, and we still have obtained grants. So by filling this position with a experienced planner, we'll still have the grant effort, but we'll also have the ability to manage and deploy those grant funds much more effectively.
I just wanted to point out that, okay, never mind. I was just double checking sort of like where this person is in the hierarchy of managerial salary ranges. And I think he's not he or she would not be in a managerial position, but an appropriate skill set and experience.
You know, my hope is that when a business comes to town and our planning department can get them on board and working through whether that's Taylor, Dusty, or the new person, that depending on what the business is and what they need, that we don't hear, hey, I have an application, how come I haven't heard? You know, that's my hope. And obviously we want the general plan pushed through. We want all those things that we want, and it always comes down to staffing. How come it hasn't done? Well, I'm doing this. You know, what do you want me to take off my plate so I can do this or that? So I get that, but like Sabrina says, we do want to see something for the money being put out. I think we owe it to the communities. All right, anybody from the public want to weigh in on this? Did I put that out there? I'm not sure. All right, bringing it back up here. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
All right.
Councilmember Strong.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Stransky.
No.
Vice Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
All right, and now, economic report for the city of Willits. Manny.
It's kind of odd, I've been sitting here looking at this from my perspective. That previous image looked like I was looking at the Chesapeake Bay. It's kind of the outline. It was kind of odd sitting here, but
Definitely. Well,
Yes.
that is a PowerPoint report. It kind of has a little bit better of a naming structure, so I apologize for the ambiguity of the first one. This has to do with a request that was given to me in order to be able to look at the impact of the cannabis industry and its subsequent fall, and its impact on the economy of Willits as it stands right now. So one of the things, when I was tasked with this, I had to kind of take a look at exactly what is going on with our economy in total. So what I did was I looked at the economy as a summary and just kind of looked at the basic demographics of our city. And so out of that, what I did was I looked at the current population for 2023, and this is an estimated increase from the U.S. Census Bureau of 2018. And I'm not 100% exactly how accurate that is, but that is currently what the U.S. Census is saying our population is at the moment. Then the average household income of $52,150, rounding, and poverty rate of 27.38%. We have 34.5, or over a third of the residents in our community that have some type of college degree, either AA or above. And one of the things I noticed within all of this data was that our workforce is aging. It increased from 37.8 years to 41.7. I also looked at the type of employment by industry, and one of the things that kind of rung out, which makes a lot of sense, is that healthcare and social assistance has made up approximately 26% of our total employment within the community itself, with trade, which is retail and wholesale, making up about 18%. Other services was an amalgam of like around 9% of various other things that just were out there. Public administration, I tried to look into other services, and I didn't really see much of anything that kind of made, any sense to call it anything else. Public administration was 9%, 5% for manufacturing, food services, agricultural and educational services, 4% for waste management and construction, and 3% rounding out management, real estate, and entertainment and arts and recreation. So given that, I looked at the business activity as of the third quarter, because that's where we had the delineated information. And within this, I've noticed that general retail was down about 37%. Food products was down about 11%. Transportation was down about 3%, or 3.7%. Construction was down 4.6%. Business to business was down about 78.2%, and before you guys freak out about it, it only amounted to about an 18.4% drop. Now this is with me looking at the quarter over quarter. When you look at it in a year perspective, it's about a 13% drop year over year. But I did take another look ahead, and that number would adjust to about 19.9% by fourth quarter. I just only have the summary data with that at the moment. What that means is that currently right now, we have about $150,000 that we are short within our taxable sales tax amounts. And it could, if we annualize that, be about $300,000. So what are the causes with this? One of the main things I just kept running into was disposable income. And what was the cause of disposable income? Well, part of the answer was the question that began this whole study, which was the cannabis industry. So in 1996, voters passed the Proposition 215, which allowed the medical use of cannabis, but not the sale of cannabis, which led to a legal gray area that was that made a boon in a way for a lot of people to be able to have a source of funding that was more disposable in nature, but not necessarily out there in the open. And so what happened in November of 2016 is the voters passed Prop 64, which legalized the use and cultivation of marijuana, and that reduced the restricted nature of the legal gray area, and it left the cannabis market subject to normal market forces. So what does that mean, right? So when we take a look at gross receipts of local businesses, one of the first things you'll notice is that from 2012 to 2016, we have a steady increase. Year over year, it's just steady and ongoing. And then as of 2016, something happened, and we could see it right there. And what ended up happening is that a lot of the disposable income within the community started to drop. And that is because the sale of cannabis, or at least the amount of the per pound rate, was dropping. And if you look at the next slide over, one of the things that is very indicative of an agricultural business being within, or being subject to market forces, is the natural reaction, or the natural tendency of a person is to attempt to grow more in order to be able to offset the loss in the normal cost of what is for sale. And that only exacerbates the problem. What ends up happening is that they try to increase their supply to make up the difference of the lower cost, which then further increases supply, which drops the cost. So eventually, at about 2021 to 2022, we had the final gasp, and it went down. When we look at it, we can see it even better when we put the two graphs together. You notice that the disposable income for the rest of the community is going down, and the prices are decreasing, so less disposable cash is available, but they're putting as much of it as they can into the growth of the cultivation of cannabis at that point. And both went down at that same 2021 to 2022 period. So in conclusion, one of the things that we probably should do is try to seek to diversify the commercial and industrial sectors of our city in order to be able to work, and also work with current industries and try to eliminate any barriers that we can. And another thing that I would suggest is a lot more robust market analysis of the community and its industries that can identify opportunities that can further the growth of this community and ensure economic stability. Among those things, I added some suggestions of identifying how many people commute from our area of work, identify the consumption behaviors of our community, identify the outside influences of our community and what is their consumption, identify local trade patterns, and understand how to utilize the natural resources of our community to our advantage. So, that was the report that I sent to you guys in a nutshell. It's just a slight bit of more information, but not really. So, any questions?
Factoring in that 2021, 22 era, some of the government money during COVID, did that influence the disposable?
That is actually true. So if you take a look at the graph itself, and I can bring that back a little bit, what you can see is the interesting thing that happened was the disposable income is actually increasing due to stimulus that was being flooded into the community. And so if you notice, the interesting thing is it falls right back into that pattern that was occurring back prior to 2016. If you draw a straight line, you'd run right into that stimulus graph at that point, which was very unique.
And would that pattern probably be across the board in California, or?
The interesting thing is that for the most part, we are being impacted more heavily here. And we've noticed that a lot of our county pool percentage has decreased as a result of it. Now, I'm not 100% certain why, but it looks like a lot of the disposable cash is leaving our community.
In that last slide, when you said about consumption from outside the city and within, what are you talking about, consumer activity?
Yeah, so consumer activities from people who are passing through, who are either heading over to Fort Bragg or heading up north, and are stopping within our community in order to be able to purchase goods or services, like stopping for gas over at Safeway, or even stopping at Safeway, or any other place within the community. Sometimes there's business-to-business activity that occurs when people stop within this community, and we notice that a lot of that has ground to a halt. But it was a tiny amount that we can register within the tax basis itself, because a lot of business-to-business activity can be hidden within the tax code because it belongs to a different jurisdiction, that amount. Because if it's a sale coming out of here, then that's great, but if it's a sale from us moving from this and it's transferring to someplace else, it doesn't really register within the tax base. That's a good example of it would be the log yard that we supported earlier on. Yes, it brings in some jobs and everything, but really the sale of logs is from one place to another, where the final product is the lumber that will probably benefit the organization or the community where that lumber is being processed. So it doesn't necessarily, go ahead.
Is there any increase in the cannabis people that are doing it by the rules versus the gray market?
Technically, yes. Now, I mean, for the most part, the ones who can survive in this market are the ones that are actually doing it more legitimately.
Yeah, because I think that the gray market is still going, and the people, I mean, how many permits are in the state, in the county of Mendocino? I mean, there still isn't very many people that are doing it legally.
Yes, but the difference between that is that whereas at one point in time they were getting $3,000 a pound, now they're getting $300 or less.
Oh, I understand the money part of it, but I'm just saying that the gray market hasn't fluctuated very much. But you have no way to know that because they're not paying taxes anyhow.
They weren't paying taxes anyhow, so that doesn't really quite play itself out. The only thing I could, when asking around in terms of like trying to gather information, a lot of the feedback I got was there was a lot of people that left the community to go to various other places where they felt the laws were less restrictive in terms, and it was a general broad area in terms of not just around here, but just move into areas where it's more freelance and not necessarily regulated. But that's just a slippery slope on the
people. If you talk to people that are in the business community, they say that the money that was floating around a couple of years ago just is not floating around anymore.
Exactly.
Not at all.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what these graphs are attempting to explain.
I think as a business owner, I agree and I disagree with the graph.
Okay.
I think that there's definitely a correlation there, but I would disagree that it maybe has as much of an impact.
Oh, no, okay,
as
so-
maybe, and here's the reason why.
Well, I did state that inside this graph. It's more of, so when I take these two graphs and I place them together, and I apologize for that, there is a little bit of an ambiguity in that. When you look at it from a perspective of, like, its true numbers and everything like that, right now it's a little bit exaggerated because what I'm taking is a component of where it was from a area of, two separate areas. One, because the nursery sales, and that's what the bottom graph is, that's nursery sales. That's just a tiny sliver of the activity within our community itself. And so it's not nearly as close to the community, the total amount that's going on in the top. And that top piece is just a sliver of the top piece. And the reason why I wanted to put those two together was to show that the correlation between the two. When you look at it from the perspective of just the nursery, that was the only industry that was increasing at that point in time. Everything else was slipping away. So some of it less than others, some of it more than others, but for the most part, they were all declining, except for the one, which was the nurseries. And it looked like in a way that they were moving their disposable cash away from purchasing things within the community like clothing or something else, and doing what they could in order to be able to feed it into their business.
Okay. The point I wanted to make, which also lines up with cannabis, that the business community is struggling with, that has nothing to do with cannabis, but coincidentally is on the same, it is the same spectrum where you see things happening, is online sales. We're all struggling with the fact that it is so easy to shop online, and it has the same trajectory going down in the peaks and the valleys as the cannabis industry does. And so I just want to make sure that we don't attribute everything to cannabis when there is at least one other major factor that has a lot of similarities. Just recognizing that.
Yeah, I would agree with that for the most part. I mean, there is a component of internet sales that we do capture because the purchase is occurring within the community. But is it as strong? Say that again. Sorry.
In the county pool.
In the county pool.
Yes.
In the county pool. But does that capture everything that's going on here? No.
I own a business in the retail sector, and what I hear from my customers every day is I shopped online, and I'm an online shopper as well as a local shopper, and I'm shopping more online than ever before because it's easy to find things that we can't find, right? And then when we look at the peak in 2020, we all know that we saw an influx of cash from all of those incentives. But there was also a campaign, I think the reason the peak's much higher there is we also saw a shop local campaign. Like everybody during 2020 and COVID was like, let's shop local. And we saw a decrease, if you look at the US numbers in terms of online shopping. We actually saw that people were shopping small more than ever and less online, despite the fact that we were in COVID, people were making a conscious effort to online shop at their local brick and mortar type places so that they could survive. So I just want to recognize the other element.
Yeah, and that's also more of the reason why I kind of expressed a desire to kind of do a more robust market analysis, because this is just taking into account the sliver of the cannabis side and what it's impacted.
But that is interesting that it's on the same trajectory.
Yeah.
It's, the thing that's interesting to me is that there are delivery trucks, the post office, UPS, and all the people that deliver the stuff, they're delivering packages at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I have a neighbor that really deals with that, and somebody's going to their house, one of the three every day. I mean, there's people that buy over the internet every day, and things are coming. And so, how can a regular business owner deal with that one?
Well, that's a challenge that we have to recognize, like with the cannabis industry. How can we as a city support our local businesses, Larry,
I hear that.
To counter some of that online sales activity.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even buy anything from that, but I mean, my neighbors are just
Yeah.
They're going and going.
Jerry, I have a message from the mayor for Manny. She said to tell you how much she appreciates this report and that your figure 1-2 really follows her business to a T, the bookstore.
Oh, okay.
And she also said to mention that she's inspired and heartened by your concluding paragraphs and looks forward to continued conversations and action regarding the diversity and strengthening of our local economy. Thank you. To pass that on.
Good. Thank you, Greta.
Yeah, your 37% was like, oh wow, you nailed it.
And
We
again,
all know what our number is.
well, and again, that's kind of what I was talking about with supporting the planning position and all that. I want to make it as easy as possible for businesses that come in and to help them where we can. You know, I mean, to the extent that we can, you know, take down those barriers and get them in here.
Not only just the permitting side, but if we can make improvements and make this community more attractive to bring in businesses and individuals or investors, that is also what community development's role is as well.
That's why we want to look at the business license tax also. But yeah, it's, you know, it's a dilemma, and I think we got hit in Willits, actually 3 major factors all hit at once, which is cannabis, the online sales, and then the bike pass.
Yeah.
So, and the bike pass hasn't had as big an impact as I worried that it would have, but it was still pretty significant if you're a hotel or restaurant owner in town. And getting all 3 of those hit us at the same time is just like...
Can I have a copy of the things that you showed on a piece of paper?
Yes, I can.
I'll
Some of
come
it's
by and
in
pick
the-
them up.
I have this first part which says most of everything, but I can also give you a copy of that one.
Thank you.
It's in our packet.
larger
Yeah.
graphic. Yeah. Excellent report,
I'll
thank
print
you.
it out and have it for you at the end.
All right.
Just an extension note of this, and I was discussing it with Manny. Building on this theme, and maybe we start stitching these different elements together. So quarterly, we receive our Bradley Burns and TOT performance numbers from Avenue. We get a breakdown. So I have asked Manny that when we receive our staff briefing, that the next or the following council meeting, that we break that down information to you.
Good.
And you can start tracking and seeing what we're seeing, and maybe from that we can generate some ideas or something that we can work with the chamber or other businesses and start moving things forward.
And all of this is going to also partner up with the Chamber of Commerce. They now have a coordinator that we could, you know, expect to see more interaction.
We're hoping that's the plan. That's what we're trying to do.
Which is great.
Thank you, Manny.
Thank you.
All right. So now we are at Department Monthly Reports, which that's done at the second meeting of each month, unless some of the department heads have anything they want to add that are here. Chief, Manny, or Dusty, anything you want to add today?
No, I'm good, thank you. I would like to recognize, I was waiting for good welfare, but I really appreciate our employees during these last storms. You know, Public Works was out there in the weather, doing what we can to make sure people, you know, are able to get through the streets. Our police department, they also had some issues where people were snowed in and couldn't get to work. And we had one particular officer, John Gale, who's fairly new to us. He walked a mile in the snow to get to a point where another officer could pick him up and take him to work. So what an extraordinary way that this guy and the other officer worked together to make this happen. I'm sure the encouragement of the chief, but we did have officers that had to work, you know, 7 days in a row, 15, 16 hours a day. That's a lot to ask of our PD, but they did it with a smile, and his wife is permitted to do any day. But yet, he trudged the snow and he got here. So I really appreciate our employees, and I want you to know that we have some exemplary people out there.
And he had to get very stern with Mrs. Gale to stay in the house because she wanted to walk down with him and then walk back by herself.
She's waking up that baby.
All right. City council announcements, communication reports. Do you guys have anything?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I actually typed it up, but I forgot to print it and bring it with me. The Sonoma Clean Power, that I'm now the representative from our cities here in Mendocino County, met on last Thursday. They always meet the first Thursday of each month in the morning. And it was fascinating. Among other things, they talked about the fact that PG&E now has something called FAST. Now, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a replacement for the PSPS thing, where they would shut down power if they thought the wind was too high or the whatever fire hazard was higher. They're now calling it something like fast stop. But they aren't letting people know what the criteria are under which these things get triggered. And it happens instantly. There's no warning. They can just shut down lines. So Sonoma Clean Power, among other public interest groups, are trying to make sure PG&E doesn't have those triggers go off too frequently, because it's obviously very hard on customers, but enough so that it is addressing the fire hazard. So things like that, where they want the public, they want transparency in what PG&E's policies are and what how that affects the customers. They also dealt with something they're calling a geozone, where they are contracting with 3 companies, one of which is Chevron, and the other 2 are smaller outfits, to develop geothermal energy, which is one of the cleanest possible sources of energy. These pilot projects are going to produce something like 20 megawatts to prove whether the technology can be scaled up or not. If it can be scaled up, all 3 of these contracts could end up with 200 megawatts each in the longer run, and that would enable Sonoma Clean Power to actually sell power to other nearby jurisdictions, as well as meeting our needs without any global greenhouse gas impacts, and very, very few environmental impacts. These are closed-loop systems that don't use a whole lot of water. So it's a very complicated and cutting-edge technology, but it's very interesting to find out about that. And then one other thing that, and they also reminded everybody that the PUC approved rate changes for solar installations, and the payback they get from excess power that they feed into the grid. And it's, as of April 15th, going to be way, way less advantageous. So if anybody's in the pipeline to get their solar up and running and all the paperwork done, if you get it done before April 15th, you get the old rate, the good rate from the point of view of the consumer with solar. So if that affects anybody, get your paperwork done. I think Dan Jurdy was wondering whether the library and museum here are going to make it or not into that, because they're putting in solar right now. So that was an interesting thing. And the final thing about Sonoma Clean Power is that the City of Point Arena just converted their usage to the Evergreen program, which helps fund Sonoma Clean Power to provide local and 100% renewable energy, rather than to mix it with any natural gas. And definitely they never use nuclear, by the way. That's off of their radar. They do not use any nuclear. So they're trying to really minimize backup energy needing to go to natural gas. And they would really love it if Willits would consider at least partially converting some of our energy use to the Evergreen program. And I talked to Brian about that, and I would like to see that come back or come to us with some kind of proposal so we can help be as green as possible in our energy portfolio. So that was my report from Sonoma Clean Power. Tomorrow, Economic Development Financing Corporation meets, and it looks to me like the only thing on the, there's several new loans. Right now, they have about 4.5 million in loans out in the county, and only a 2% rate of, risk, loans at risk where the people are having trouble paying back. So it's really being well managed. I'm very impressed with the management of EDFC. I'm probably not going to make it to that meeting because it has to be in person in Ukiah, and I'm trying to avoid that. I still have not heard any news from the Mendocino Solid Waste Management Authority. I will follow up and see what's happening. So far, nothing has happened.
Mendocino Transit Authority, I heard from a few people locally, mostly seniors, that were concerned about the lack of transportation during the snow, and I just expressed that the local cutaway bus that provides transportation generally within the city limits was only down for about 6 hours. It was due to safety reasons. The senior van looks like it's part of MTA, but it's actually a program underneath that is run separately. And they weren't able to provide services due to drivers and concerns about safety, and so they were down 2-3 days on and off in there. And then there was some limitation in bus service between Willits and Fort Bragg, but as you know, roads were not safe to travel. There really wasn't was nothing that we could prevent, but in general, buses and public transportation in general was pretty available. But I did receive a few local complaints about that, and then we haven't had a meeting, so nothing to report there. There is a planning meeting for the land use coming up. I just received an email that it was scheduled for the 21st, and it's the second meeting, and unfortunately, what?
Third.
It got changed to the 23rd?
No, it's the third meeting that
Oh, it's the third meeting, okay. My point being that it was scheduled for the 21st, and we were given a couple of dates that might work, and that isn't a date that I'm available. Unfortunately, I'm out of town on that date, and I feel an obligation that if I'm going to serve on this committee that I want to be present. So I wanted to open up to the council and just see if there was somebody else who wanted to step into the role. The meeting's happening on next Tuesday at
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock. And there's nothing I can do to adjust my schedule to attend that meeting.
2 weeks from, not next Tuesday, but the one after, I think.
The 21st?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I have been attending those, and I'm enjoying it, but it would be nice to have 2 representatives.
Yes. It just, the timing hasn't worked out in my schedule, the time of the day, or the days of the week. I always seem to select the one that nobody else can attend, but I can be at. So if there's another member of this council that would like to fill that role, I just want to throw it out there. If not, Madge will attend, and then maybe at the next meeting, I'll be there.
I forgot to report on that.
I'm tied up on Tuesdays.
Tuesday as well.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Larry, do you have a desire?
Nope.
Okay, so unless our mayor expresses some interest in filling in while I'm out, I'll continue to serve. I just won't be at the next meeting. Sorry.
And I'm sort of counting on, well, I'm not sure. Should I count on you to make a report at the second meeting of each month, or should I be reporting on that?
You should be reporting.
Okay, then I'm
going to jump back in?
I could.
Go ahead.
I could jump in. Yeah. Okay, I'll jump back in. So the second meeting of the advisory committee on the land use element, there I can see a lot of forward progress is happening. So in addition to having all these overlay maps with all the constraints of where you shouldn't really build and what those, what are the areas that are impacted by outside factors, they were also identifying all the underutilized or unused areas both within city limits and nearby city or adjacent to city limits. And we had some good discussion about what some of those, kind of what we think about those. But this is all kind of preliminary to getting a lot of public feedback. They're about to, they haven't gone live yet, but they will very shortly, with a website which will include a public, a survey of the public. What kinds of land uses people think we need more of, what kinds of densities do people want, what kinds of services do they want. So it's going to be a fairly comprehensive public survey, which should be live within a week if it isn't already on there. You'll have to give me the website.
We had a meeting today to finalize the survey, so it should be going live here shortly.
And then by the end of the month, very end of this month, we might be able to have our first actually in-person public open house and present to the general public what's been accomplished to date, what kinds of feedback they need to keep going. But I think the team is working really well, and the advisory committee includes some of the stakeholders, some of the larger businesses and Chamber of Commerce and hospital, people like that. So there is already citizen representation on that advisory committee, but I think opening it up is going to be really
I did get to watch all the slides because you send out the presentation of what it looked like at their meeting, and as a result of that, I had several questions that came up as I was looking through things that I had questions. And when city manager and I had our weekly meeting, I was like, well, what does this mean, and what about that? So even though I wasn't there, there was some good content in getting that information after the fact. So thank you.
Sorry you're missing some of the fun, but I'm glad you're reaching.
Yeah, Brian's keeping me well informed, but sorry I wasn't there. Yeah.
Claire, do you have anything?
There's value sometimes.
I just want to, I had LAFCO this Monday, and it's a nice little trip down in the snowy weather across 101. And again, we're all meeting in public. One of the things we discussed was the remote meeting policy and all of that, and we passed that. And we did cover that, because we have a lot of alternates that are on there, that the alternates can go on remotely as long as they're not participating. So like in the case like you with Sonoma Clean Power, if the regular person's going to be there, you can Zoom in if they have a hybrid meeting, and just like staff, but you can't participate. I mean, in the sense that that's what we were told. The attorney for LAFCO said, yeah, you can. That came up, and somebody said, no, as long as you're not a voting member, you're basically like a public member at that point. So you can get on, and so I mean, I guess it saves you a trip to Point Arena or Point South or wherever when that happens and stuff. So we did have one item. There was a public hearing on an I guess it's called an out-of-agency service agreement for wastewater services for the city of Ukiah and Ukiah Sanitation District. They kind of carved up this area out there in the county that has on Consular Ranch Road and Carter Lane, where there's some businesses and some undeveloped parcels that right now are on septic, and kind of weird that there's actually sewer pipe out there. Somebody was thinking ahead of time, but it kind of throws the ball back into the county. I mean, this kind of came up in our meeting that, okay, we're approving this. It's kind of like a temporary Band-Aid so that the city and the sanitation district can offer services out there to these areas that ultimately need to be annexed in by the city of Ukiah. And that's the plan. The sanitation district and the city of Ukiah have kind of buried the hatchet in their dispute, and now they're working together with the idea that eventually areas that are sanitation district will become city of Ukiah. But the concern really came back to the tax sharing agreements with the county, that becomes the stickler. And Supervisor Mulhern said that she's on that group, and that it's moving forward is what she told us. But there was some skepticism from some of the folks on LAFCO that we may all be off of LAFCO by the time those agreements are signed, but at the same time, again, the push is that the ball's now in the court of the county. I think everybody's kind of looking at the county at that point and saying, okay, we're doing our part as LAFCO, now it's going to be up to the county to push forward those agreements. So I kind of wanted to throw that out there because that's going to, Brian's been participating in those agreements and those discussions, and
I think there's progress that's been made at the last ad hoc committee meeting. I think we're right at the finish line. Some concessions were made for the county and Ukiah with their uniqueness in that Ukiah Valley. I think the 3 other municipalities can agree to what's on the table. There's a concession for, like I said, between Ukiah and the county. I think our next meeting is going to figure out the protocols of either taking it to the supervisors first or we'd like to take it to the councils first and use that leverage to influence the county.
And the only other thing I have is on the 16th, again, my League of Cities Policy Committee be through Zoom because it's happening in Sacramento. And then on the 17th, I believe Larry and I are participating in a sewer ad hoc at 10 o'clock here on the 17th.
And we're finalizing the agenda for your consideration.
And then on the 24th, the League of Cities, our Redwood region is going to be meeting in Arcata, 1 o'clock. So they've kind of, I don't know if any of you got that thing. I'll send it to Brian to send out if you're interested in making that trek to Arcata.
Sounds like you got it covered.
Yeah, so I will be in Arcata that day, and I'm just kind of praying that it don't rain and that it don't snow, because I'm not looking forward to
Thank you for going to Arcata on our behalf.
Yeah, and so, and most people, they're like, when they sent out the hotel, I said, I'm not staying the night, I'm going to the meeting and turn around and coming back, so. So it'll be, yeah, and it says heavy snow and rain, I just got some blurb for California, so I don't know if this next round of storms is going to be terrible. So again, my heart out to all our employees that are going to be out working in this weather, so that's all I have.
There's one additional item that Mayor Connie informed me this afternoon that I want to pass along. The Veterans Hall next to the high school is going to be accommodating a warming center from Tuesdays to Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m.
Yes.
So just want to pass that information along.
And I had one question for you about, I know I received and probably other members received an invitation to participate in something that's happening at the museum about brainstorming about saving the museum. It wasn't really clear what their objective is in the 2 meetings that they offered. I thought maybe you could enlighten us.
So the museum is the museum director, county staff, and I'm part of the strategic planning group, several other key members of the community as well. What we're trying to do is put together a strategic plan to strengthen the position and the presence of the museum in this community and the county, and then present that to the Board of Supervisors to basically acknowledge that they need fair consideration for budgeting. They can't always be on the chopping block by the supervisors. So these meetings are basically public forums to encourage members, in this case the council, to come down and listen to what is being discussed for planning opportunities, and then you can provide your comments on how the museum could better serve not only Willits, but also the county.
I don't know if I got that, maybe I'm wrong.
I think we got it a week ago.
Yeah.
Really? Okay, I'll double check.
And there were 2 dates. I couldn't make the first one, but the second
So
one I
so the museum, they're actually going to do a roadshow. They're having facility meetings here. They're also going to be out on the coast. They're going to be out in Port Arena and then Fort Bragg. They're in Ukiah. I'm going to do a busman's holiday and actually attend some of the sessions on Port Arena and Fort Bragg, kind of as my position of the strategic planning group, just to convey what we've been working on and kind of the focus of the ideas that we have so far.
It's a good idea.
Do you know who would have sent it?
Karen Matson.
I thought mine came from someone else.
Deborah Sampson?
Maybe.
That's probably the person.
I think it was Deborah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
If you have any additional information on that, please let me know.
Could you forward that to me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, any good and welfare?
Well, you just reminded me of one that I had forgotten. I wasn't going to remember it unless, but about the museum, there had been a scheduled workshop with, I think, 5 or 6 different speakers about cannabis and the local economy, which is perfect to go with what we talked about today. And I can't remember who all of the panelists were going to be, and it had to be rescheduled because of the storm. And I believe that's going to be on March 17th. And I think it's late afternoon, but I'm not sure about the time. Anyway, it seems like it would be a very timely thing to hear what these panelists say about cannabis and our local economy. So that's one announcement. And then another one is on March 19th, Sunday, at 4 o'clock at the Senior Center. WELL and other organizations and individuals putting our heads together on building community. I think I announced it 2 weeks ago, but it's coming right up now. And we're talking about housing, local food and agriculture, health, senior and youth programs, and business community. So we have kind of representatives of different organizations and trying to bring people, cross-fertilize, so we all know what each other are doing and can help each other.
I read that, but it seemed like such a broad that I just wasn't quite sure like what the objective was going to be there.
Well, I'll share, anybody wants to have a little flyer about it, I have a couple of them here. But it is, we're hoping that after this meeting, there are kind of spin-off groups that take a project and run with it.
Okay.
So that it isn't all like one big amorphous group. We really actually want to accomplish something and not just schmooze and talk.
That's what it felt like, because it was so broad.
Yeah, we're trying to make it action-oriented. So if anyone wants a little reminder of that meeting. So those are my good and welfares, not to mention my grandson.
Owen.
All right, anything else?
Jerry, I would like to welcome City Manager Bender back from his vacation and tell him how much I appreciate everything you do here. And I'd also like to thank staff for being so flexible and understanding this past week with everything that was going on around town. And I appreciate them just
Dolores,
stepping
strike
up.
that first statement out for the record.
Exclamation point, exclamation point.
No, there was a lot of contact. I was tracking what was happening. Kathy was briefing or getting brief assessments from staff and relaying that to me. And like I said, I missed playing in the snow, but we'll see how it goes. Everything went well.
All right. Do you want us to pass those? You're in charge of adjournment.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, we're all looking at you.
Okay.
Where's the gavel?